Okay.
Alrighty. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us on our second Turf Club meeting for the fall of 2020. I hope everybody's staying safe and staying healthy and having a good semester so far. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Eric Greytok, who will be talking about how to develop your golf course program. Eric was raised in Bucks County at an early age and took interest in golf and eventually playing for his high school golf team. As his interest grew in both golf and landscape maintenance, Eric decided he wanted to pursue a career in the golf industry, leading him to the Penn State University Turfgrass program. After graduating with a degree in turfgrass science, Eric began his professional career at Marion Golf Club. During his time at Marion, Eric was also introduced into a well-known and respected network of professionals that have all been guided by both Paul B. Latshaw and his father, Paul R. Latshaw. Paul R. Latshaw hired him at Riviera Country Club to assist in the aggressive conditioning for the course for the 1998 U.S. Senior Open. The outstanding success of this preparations of Riviera for the U.S. Senior Open led Eric to yet another nationally recognized club, Congressional Country Club. Eric's constant dedication to the profession for most of his early life rewarded him with an excellent opportunity at the world's most recognizable golf course, Pebble Beach Golf Links. He was given the golf course superintendent position there in December of 1999, a mere 6 months before the U.S. Open came calling in June of 2000. Eric would become the youngest superintendent, age 27, to host the U.S. Open. In 2001, Wingfoot Golf Club hired Eric as their new superintendent to oversee a complete overhaul of their infrastructure and course conditioning in the anticipation for hosting several USGA championships. During his time at Wingfoot, Eric accomplished many renovations and additions to both 18-hole courses, culminating with hosting the 2004 U.S. Amateur and the 2006 U.S. Open. Eric became the youngest superintendent to host 2 U.S. Opens, and both were considered amongst the most memorable tournaments in decades, not only for the golf, but also for their impeccable conditions. Eric was provided a unique opportunity to add to his portfolio of experience, a new golf course construction project. Remington Ranch obtained his services as their director of agronomy. Eric managed the construction of the first private course, Wicked Pony, and oversaw the utility and road construction for the residential areas of the property. Eric felt the need to return to golf maintenance, and an opportunity arose for him at Belfair Plantation in the Hilton Head area. Hired to direct a 36-hole operation, Eric implemented an aggressive cultural program which has drastically improved the health of all turfgrass while raising the level of course conditioning. After 5 years of service to Belfair, Eric was presented with an opportunity he could not pass, directing maintenance at the well-known Eagle Point Golf Club in North Carolina. Here, Eric worked with membership desires to deliver a championship course and develop a master plan for the future of the course in the 2017 Wells Fargo Championship. In 2015, Macrosorb Technologies and SMS Additive Solutions hired Eric to be a national sales manager. This unique opportunity allowed Eric to build and grow a company from the ground floor into a nationally recognized foliar fertility and surfactant company within a short 3-year period. Eric feels it is very important to share his professional knowledge with distributors and superintendents that gave so much to him and his career. Welcome, Eric, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to, come in and talk with everyone that is part of the program at Penn State. It only took me 4.5 years to graduate Penn State. You can get sidetracked there very easily. And I did for a half a semester, but I ended up graduating, I guess it was the spring of 1996. Got to walk back then. But I like to run these presentations pretty informally. So if you have questions along the way about what I'm going to present, please just ask. The presentation I put forward is something that I actually see on the road quite a bit. These are my observations from the industry for the last 6 years, being able to travel around and meet with superintendents. I generally give this presentation to an assistant boot camp out in California with the Northern California Golf Association, and it's generally well received. But these the presentation is going to kind of make you think. That's the whole point of this, and think about your process of how you develop your program, what inputs you look at, and really taking the time to reflect on what worked and what didn't work. And you know, I see a lot of different things out in the industry right now. And unfortunately, a lot of simple mistakes are being made that shouldn't be, in my perspective. So I'm going to dive right into this presentation, and please ask any questions at any time. So this presentation is how to develop your program for your golf course. You know, this methodology has kind of served me well over the 15 years as I was a golf course superintendent, and it was really kind of seeing a lot of observations, mistakes, successes, but I really kind of break it down to a journalistic or scientific approach. You know, you got to get informed. You know, I always ask the questions when I'm looking at things on turf, or, you know, whether it is political, financial driven, and you have to know the who, what, where, when, and why of what the issue is. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned as being a golf course superintendent, when you don't know something, say, hey, I don't know, but I will find out. And that's your job, is to inform yourself. And once you inform yourself, then you can understand the cause, you know, what is causing the issue, and get behind it. And then you're going to be able to organize your information, you know, come up with your game plan, and then be able to talk to your membership. So don't just take it for, I guess, for what somebody's telling you as fact. It's your job to inform yourself as to what is going on. So where to start? This is where I always start. I call it the 5 W's, like any journalistic approach, you know, the who, what, where, when, and why. And, you know, a lot of times you come across issues, and they're a historical issue. They happen year after year. And, you know, you really need to go back and say, what part of my program is not working, and why is this? You need to understand what you're trying to control and how. I see a lot of misapplications out there in the golf course industry, from, you know, should a product be watered in, to what depth should it be watered in? Should it not be watered in? The timing of it. So really understand what you're trying to control and how you can do it. It's interesting, you know, with the advent of the GPS sprayer out there, you know, identifying problematic areas and how to control these is becoming, you know, a lot easier. I'm seeing superintendents going ahead and GPSing, you know, low swales or low lying areas, you know, for Pythium control, or we're seeing, you know, surfactant applications of being so specific on fairways, where they go out and they map it and they identify them. So identify the areas that you want to control and what you're going to use. One of the other important things is identifying the timing of your control. So, I mean, all of this stuff is pretty basic, but I think the thing to realize is when the pressure is on, and when you have the adverse conditions that can, you know, really kind of turn up the pressure on your decision making, you know, fall back to, you know, a thought process and a philosophy. And, you know, that is something that you can develop now. You know, ask your superintendents how they identify problems. You know, it was kind of interesting when I worked in New York. I knew when June 25th hit, I was going to see anthracnose and bacterial wilt. It was that time of year. I don't know what it was. It was the stress of the golf course. But every year, right around June 25th, my cultural programs would change, and it was based on historical data. So, you know, put things on a calendar, keep a journal. I've always kept a journal, a daily journal of what you did that day, what was applied, how it was applied, things like that. And you also have to adjust and be flexible in your in what you're doing. And I think, you know, the old adage really should be taken into account is less is more. We want to fix things. We want to fix them extremely quickly. We want things to, you know, get better immediately. Well, it takes time for that plant to recover, and you can't force that recovery process. So sometimes, you know, just back off and test new products. I think you should test every new product before you put it on the golf course. I've seen a lot of mistakes out there that have cost people jobs because they just did not take the time to test the product. I really believe that this is the core management, or my philosophy is I manage to Liebig's law of minimum, and my interpretation is identify the limiting factor that affects growth. Is it shade? Is it fertility? Is it water? Pesticide prevention? Is it your crew? Is it budgetary constraints from the membership? If you can identify your limiting factor and correct that limiting factor, you know, you will have growth. And that's something that's your job. And I see a lot of people not doing this. I don't see a lot of people identifying that and kind of taking status quo. So, you know, develop your philosophy and, you know, go from there. Sorry. I really look at the historical, current, and potential problems. After every application, whether it's fertilizer, fungicide, insecticide, herbicide, take notes and review those applications, and really look at, you know, was that application effective enough? Investigate, you know, why the problem occurred. You know, is it, you know, why are you having to use surfactants? Why are you having to use so much herbicides? Are you not feeding enough? Review your environmental contributing factors as to what is causing this issue. Review your previous agronomic plan. Did it cause the problem? Did you bring on the issue? Are you, you know, looking at things and, you know, forcing that growth, or, you know, are you double cutting? Are you rolling too much? Or what is the timing of that? Or it could have golf caused the issue. So I think, you know, sometimes we tend to get caught in the weeds of things, and, you know, whether that is a bad interaction with a member, or, you know, having to reprimand a staff member. But, you know, you kind of have to rise above all of that and take into stock of why you're hired and why you're there. This is one of the biggest things that I see that people mismanage. They don't understand the pest you're trying to control. That's why we have, you know, that's why we have manufacturers representatives. We have professors. These are the people that you should be going to learn how to control these problems. Manufacturers are great in understanding of how their products work, but when you can go to, you know, your professors, and they're a great conduit to find out how people are controlling things, and how they're using their products. So really understanding your pest and how to control them, and the timing of it, that's your job. And I see a lot of failures in the industry where there's misinformation on the recommendation. Always validate for yourself as to what you're putting out. I generally call the manufacturer directly. Nothing against salesmen, but a lot of times they're not educated enough on how to use these products or what they may be. So, you know, these are the different things we're trying to control: fungal, weeds, insects, you know, LDS, fertility management, nematodes, and really, you know, take that time in the off season, or, you know, go to classes, go on the webinars, use these avenues to educate yourself, because this is where I see one of the biggest discrepancies on people's understanding of products. When you're developing your program, break it down into areas, break it down into your greens, tees, fairways, and roughs, and what you're trying to accomplish at that time of year. I always had I had a 8-month plan up on my wall, and it broke down every playing surface, what I was going to put out, when I was going to put it out, fungicides, insecticides, herbicide, fertility, growth regulators. I broke it down, per event, and how things were going to be laid out for that year. And it's basically a game plan, and it's something that you can look at and review every day. But it was very powerful that when a member could walk in and they saw all the applications up on the wall for, the next 8 months, it gave them a vote of confidence that, we were on top of things, and we knew what we were doing and when we were going to do it. It's just those simple little things that, it probably take you a couple of days to lay it out. I think it used to take me probably 3 or 4 days to lay out the whole year. And it was a guideline. I mean, basically it was a guideline with the exception of, some of the herbicides or insecticide applications, that usually happened within 2 weeks. But everything else was a guideline that I was able to use. And this is where I see a lot of people get in trouble, is they shoot from the hip. They don't have that game plan. I think, there's science behind all of this, from doing your soil tests, understanding what's going on in your soils, what you're deficient in, and looking at your water quality. That's a chemical reaction in the soil. So, what you water with is generally what's going to be present in your soil. So if you're high in bicarbonates and salts, they're going to be depositing in there. And where I see a lot of people get into problems, you'd be shocked at how many people do not do a soil test in the course of a year, or even a water test. It's the first question I ask when I go in and see people. Can I see your soil and water tests? And I generally go through, an accredited lab. I never left it up to a fertilizer manufacturer, to do my soil testing. I wanted to speak to people, go through your extension agents, or, there's plenty of people in the industry, and quiz them on the fact of, what nitrogen source should I be using at what time of year? What potassium sources have the lowest salt contents? And then do the same thing with your chemical program. And this is where I see a lot of failures within the industry, that people just don't even know how to read a soil test. And that's something that you should know, how much calcium to sodium should I be putting out, to help with, relieving salts and sodium. So it's, take the time, this is your opportunity to learn all of this, and take the time to learn the fundamentals and the theory behind it, and then continue on with that education. Because what you find in the industry is you'll find people that do the same thing year after year after year, and it's not necessarily what's the best thing for the golf course. What can influence the control of your application? There's a lot of different things, and these are the things that you need to be thinking about. And this is probably what I have on this slide is generally where I see all the failures when people don't take these things into account. They just don't do the due diligence. One of the first questions you should ask is, what is the pH of your spray water, and how is that affecting your fungicide applications or your insecticide applications? Are you putting out the appropriate amount of water with that application? Should it be in the thatch? Shouldn't it be in the thatch? So these are all the things that, you need to know in order to develop your program, so you get the most money out of your program. Your application methods, whether it's for fertility, fungicide, insecticide, growth regulators, granular versus liquid. What is the best way to control that pest? And know your pesticides and their mode of action. You see a lot of misapplications out there in the industry because people are not sure of the mode of action. Go to seminars. Seminars aren't for partying. Go to your seminars, get on your webinars, and learn and ask questions. There's a lot of things that we all don't know in this field. We get comfortable with how we do things, but it's your job to push past your comfort zone to provide a healthy and better product. Figuring out your chemical rotations, preventative versus curative, contact, systemic, sterile inhibitors, growth regulators. And you'd be shocked at how many people still will mix sterile inhibitors with their growth regulators, and it's stressful times, and then kill turf. And it's just a lack of education. So these are the things that I'm seeing out in the industry that people just aren't taking the time to educate themselves, developing that program, scrutinizing it. And I would say years ago, everyone was so hush hush about what they were doing, and you'll still come across some colleagues in the industry that don't want to talk about their program because they feel it's proprietary. Well, that's just in my opinion, dumb. Talk to people out there and what is going on. Part of what I would see was when I was up in New York, I would call a superintendent friend of mine who was in Central Jersey of, when is he going to put out his ABW control? And I knew I was 10 days behind him, and he would put out his control because he was 10 days behind Washington, D.C. So you kind of develop, friendships and get involved in the associations and the GCSAA and make different contacts in different areas, because a lot of people, use these contacts to figure things out. What are you seeing down in the DC area? A lot of times I would call people down there because of the disease pressure, or, people in Kentucky that were growing bent or POA. So really, use this network that has been created, use your everyone that's, you're going to school with, and develop that, because, you can learn a lot of what to do and what not to do by talking to your classmates. I've always done this, the calendar method. I would have people from Syngenta. I would have Dr. Lane Treadway come in, and he and I would sit down and write my whole chemical program for the year, and he was working with Syngenta. Then I'd have the BASF people come in, and, they want your best interests involved, and they can help you write these programs, especially for your first year. And then once you see the performance of different products and how you choose your program, you can try different chemicals at different, times a year, or different technologies. Talk to other superintendents. I would say, a lot of people do things based on more on peer review instead of sometimes science, which is okay. There's some good practical knowledge out there of the timing of these products. But, talk to fellow superintendents, know what you're trying to control and when. You just see a lot of people missing the windows on applications, and, put it on a calendar and keep track of what you're doing. Because, you're going to be put in situations where you're going to have to come down and, develop your budget. And, that's basically application by application. But, you kind of forget through the course of the year what worked and what didn't work. So, keep that journal and keep notes on all of those applications of what you liked and what you didn't like. And, things, you'd be surprised. You do You do your sunlight studies, you do your soil testing, you do your water quality testing. You bring in people to help you develop that chemical program. And year one, you'll probably be very preventative in all your approaches, your approach to doing things. Year two, you get more comfortable with it. Year three, you're refining it, and by year 4 and 5, it should be pretty much on cruise control. And I can't stress enough that when I go in and talk with people and work with them, and maybe Dr. Kaminsky can comment on this, but um, you know, it's a lot easier to grow turf when you have balanced soils and you have balanced inputs. And when you can, when you do your soil testing and you understand how things are working in the soil, it does make turf management a lot easier. It's just my philosophy is, you got a healthy soil, you're going to have a healthy plant. So, take the time to, gather all that information to help create your program, and you'd be surprised how easy it is.
Yeah, Eric, I would just say that one of the things that I stress with the students and any consulting I do is just, you said it earlier, like the fundamentals are so important. And sometimes we get so caught up in all the like bells and whistles that we don't think about the basic things that we need to be doing to have healthy grass, like tree removal and sunshine and shade and fertility. So
The biggest thing that I've seen kill turf this year is water management. Guys are not, they're getting, if I'm going to be completely honest and frank here, guys are getting lazy. I know COVID happened and there was a stretch with, where people had to rely more on their irrigation, but, nothing will replace great water management as taking a moisture meter and a probe and going around and probing that 3 acres that you get judged on. Don't get lazy on the greens, because that's where most people lose their jobs. They don't lose jobs because they lose fairways. They lose jobs because they lose greens. And keeping it simple, and sometimes just taking your foot off the gas and not pushing the turf when it shouldn't be pushed. I see, you have events and you have things like that, but sometimes just backing off and taking a little heat because things are slow is better than getting fired because stuff's dead. This was one of my spray programs that I did. I would lay out. This was in the Carolinas. I'd be spraying Subdue, Avid, Heritage Insignia, Segway. I knew Segway I could get a solid 10 days out of. Subdue, I didn't really get anything out of Subdue. My Banol applications would last 4 to 7 days because the pressure was so intense. So, getting it out, getting it on your calendar. You can see on July 22nd, I sprayed Segway and my soil spray. And then I had to come back on July 25th with Avid and Segway again. So, I mean, there's instances where, you're gonna just be spraying and you're gonna get afternoon thunderstorms and you're gonna get 1 to 2 inches of rain, and it's gonna get hot and it's gonna get humid. So, I knew my chemistries, I knew the timing. I was talking to all my representatives, and really what kind of worked in that area and in the Carolinas and in South Carolina. If I got 4 days out of Banol, that was a great application. So, typically in the Northeast, you're going to get 7 to 10 days out of it. But everything changes, and that's where we would monitor things. And quite frankly, the best way I could monitor it was I would get a thunderstorm in the evening. I'd come in, I'd spray my Terrazol in the morning, and then things look fine. And then 3 days later, my turf is puking out again. It's getting yellow. I'd send a sample off, active Pythium, and that's 3 days after a Terrazol application. So, having to come back and talking with, my manufacturers and my professors and coming back with all of that is what they're there for. So always, if you don't know what's going on, send a sample off. And this is the biggest thing I see is, I don't know if it's a pride factor or what, but it's kind of stupid. In my opinion, if I ever saw something that didn't look right, I would send samples off. I would send for pathology. I would send off a soil sample of the area if it was a collar or cleanup checking out. You know, was I getting black layer? Was I building up salts or bicarbonates in those areas? So there's an answer to these things. It's just your job to figure it out. Always test new products. I call it trust verify. You trust your salesman coming in, but verify what they say. And if you're going to see it, it's just a term I've developed over the years is trust verify. They have electric backpack sprayers now. I'm sure that you guys have seen in A&M Leonard. You can buy it. It's a 4-gallon backpack sprayer. You can put flat fan nozzles in it. It has agitation. And there's no reason now that you can't mix up 2 gallons of material and go out and test spray areas. That's extremely important. I would not put anything on my golf course if I went back to being a superintendent again without testing it. There's not a lot of things that we can control in this industry. I've always said that we can control how much nitrogen we're putting out in fertility and what chemicals, we're putting out. We try to manipulate water, but trust, verify everything everyone is coming through the door and trying to sell to you. So it's your job. Remember that. The salesman gets to, go home at the end of the day. But this is something that has become a lot easier in the course of the last couple of years, especially with all of these electric backpack sprayers. There's no reason. And, I think the thing that I have learned about all this is I spray labeled rates, but then I spray usually a 10x rate just to see at what point I can induce phytotoxicity, because I need to know that, because if a misapplication does go out, then at least I'm covered and I know what I have to do. And that's really it for the presentation part of it. It's let me see. Let me figure this out here. So, do I share this anymore? No. I don't know if you guys can see me. It's not that hard keeping things simple, thinking things through, really looking at, what you're putting in the tank, what you're spraying, getting all of your information. I believe in, you gotta get all your information as to what you're going to do before you do it. Some instances that doesn't happen, but, just take the time to educate yourself. That's the biggest thing I see right now in the industry is people just don't take the time to figure out, what is causing the problem, and they're not getting to the root of it. Can you guys see me?
Yeah, we see you.
Okay, cool. I know Kyle wanted to cover part of the U.S., the preparation for the U.S. Open at Wingfoot when I was there. But I don't know what kind of questions you guys have. I'll just open it up and kind of go from there. You there, Kyle?
Yes. First question I had to ask you is being at Wingfoot in 2004, coming off of the U.S. Amateur, what really went into that year and a half moving into the U.S. Open in 2006 after that 04 event, and like what preparations changed compared to preparing for the Amateur to the Open?
Good question. I would say there was greater preparation in 2001 to really the U.S. Amateur. you know, I kind of think back on that. It was kind of a fast and furious process. Um, I walked into the tail end of a major tree program, removal program, and you know, I was kind of the one got caught holding the bag there. So you know, I was immediately on the hot seat as to when the members came back. So we removed all the trees, and really once all the trees were removed, we were awarded the amateur and the open. That was, you know, something that was kind of interesting. And then from there, it was really trying to convince the membership over the next really 4 years that we said we needed to, you know, improve the infrastructure. So redo all of the irrigation. We had 1940, 50, 60, 70, and 80 irrigation, you know, there. We had galvanized pipe running on top of the ground. We had asbestos pipe in the ground. There were no isolation valves. The only thing that you could do was just turn off the pump station. So, you know, we had to, you know, get that going immediately. The bunkers needed to be redone. So really, we needed to be done before the U.S. Amateur. I would say '04 to '06 was basically just don't screw up. You know, keep the turf alive, continue to refine on, you know, working on imperfections, whether it was a collar dam or, you know, low trenches in the rough or a fairway. So in my opinion, after the U.S. Amateur, it was a lot easier to prepare. But it was those first 3 years we redid all the bunkers. We cut down 800 trees. We did a rough renovation. We did green extensions. We replaced the irrigation. You know, there at Wingfoot, it's, you know, all of New York and New York City is built on rock. So it took us, we started in the summer of, I'm trying to think there, wow. Summer of 2002, we started putting mainline in, and we did not finish the irrigation system until June. No, it was March of '04. So we were almost 2 years on working on that irrigation system to get it in because of so much rock, and the rock wheels and the trenchers and, you know, everything we had to do. So, you know, the goal was to have everything done by the amateur. And then after the amateur, it was just aerifying rough, seeding it, making it thick, and just working on all our imperfections, you know, basically, you know, realigning tees. You know, I think we built, you know, maybe a new tee or something there. So, you know, after '04, it was, you know, pretty much let's coast into this. And, you know, the summer of '05, we almost ran out of water. I remember that we had probably about 7 days left in the pond before, you know, we were out of water, and the rain finally came.
I got a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, you've been a superintendent in a lot of places and experienced a lot of different things. For students that are coming out like now, right? So they're just, say, graduating. What are your expectations for somebody at that level, if you were looking to hire people?
I guess my expectation is that they're coming there to be engaged, to want to work, to want to learn, to, you know, care. You know, you go around and you talk to a lot of superintendents around the country, and people, they say people just aren't as engaged. And I think the more you can realize the people you're going to go work for, and not necessarily the superintendent, but the membership, they did not get to be where they are by working 40 hours a week. You know, they got to be where they are by putting in the time and the sacrifice, and they still do it. So I see this whole thing, and I don't know, you know, I see the whole millennial thing, and, you know, finding that quality of life. And I think there has to be balance. And, you know, it really should be identified on that balance of, you know, if I'm going to be in the Northeast, my balance is the wintertime. I get to go mess around. I get to go have fun, but you're being paid to be there from really May through September. And so I think the thing for everyone there, I think it's an amazing time to be in the industry. I really do. I think, the whole COVID thing is the second coming of Tiger. Golf is booming. There's 2-week waiting list in states of, Phoenix or Florida or Texas, 2-week waiting list on public golf courses. So I think this is an extremely great opportunity. And if I were, coaching my own son to go into this, I'd be like, keep your head down, learn, volunteer for everything that you can, at the golf course, put your time in, because I think it's a time in this career that I do not see. I see there's going to be great potential and opportunity in the next 5 to 10 years. I really do. I think people are retiring out. I think this type of year is going to weed out the people that are really passionate about turf and want to grow it. And it's going to be a great opportunity. And the biggest thing is be patient, because, I was an assistant for 6 years before I became a superintendent. And, if I had jumped right out of school into a superintendent's position or even an assistant's position, I would have missed out on a lot, missed out on learning a lot. And, go around, travel, work in different parts of the United States, because that's where you learn. You're not going to learn everything just at one facility.
To go back to the water management part that you mentioned it was the biggest mistake superintendents made this past season.
Mm-hmm.
Since that's such an important part of management and each course is different, what would you do to really learn how to water a course that you just got to?
Shut the water off. It's funny. I like to, push things and see where that threshold is of where, things start to wilt. I think, wilt can be a good thing. I think wet wilt is a bad thing. But, generally when you keep things on the drier side, you're not going to have complaints from the membership. Membership's going to complain by, things are too wet, balls are plugging. So, hand water your greens. It's hard. It's not easy. It's, it stinks dragging a hose and hitting greens 6 times a day or just watering localized dry spots. But you learn a lot about your golf course, and you'd be surprised at how much turf can take and things bounce back. It's, people get alarmed when they see wilt. I would look at wilt and I would come back to it, and it didn't change. And then I come back to it again in another hour, and it didn't change, and it wilted. When it got purple, dark purple and black, yeah, I'd hit it, but I didn't pull my hose out without checking to see what moisture was in there. And I see a lot of mistakes. Guys just see wilt, and I think when you go and you learn how to grow turf in extreme climates, when you grow cool season turf in the Carolinas, and I would come out and I would see wilt and I would see guys watering it, my first question would be like, well, did you check the moisture? Because they could be watering something that had Pythium root dysfunction, or, it could have been one of the toughest diseases I've ever had to control was summer patch on bent grass, and putting more water down was not necessarily the correct thing to do. So turf can take a lot. You can push things. You just have to find that threshold, and that's getting uncomfortable and having to, in my opinion, drag hose and go out and push things. So my thing was I go on the golf course and I would be like, shut the irrigation off. Let's see what we got here, and all of a sudden, the greens wilt in 2 days. You're like, well, that's not good. This is going to be a long summer. We're going to be dragging hose all summer, guys. And, those are the kind of things that you kind of have to figure out. But, I'm not saying advocating shutting the water off over the whole golf course, especially if you don't have the staff, but maybe start with a couple of tees or, maybe greens or, a fairway or two and look at it that way. Same thing, testing your chemicals, test some of these areas and try that. And, you'd be surprised how quickly you'll get a feel for things and be like, geez, they really overwatered this place for years. So that's kind of my recommendation.
Thank you.
I've always said an irrigation head is not smarter than a person with a hose. That head can't tell you where to put water and where it can't. Only you can.
Hey Eric, Tony here. I had a quick question. How did you know when you were ready to progress in the industry from AIT assistant to super and whatnot? Were you ready, or at some points, or did you just learn sometimes on the fly?
I was pushed into a lot of situations. So, I think it's a mindset, you sink or swim. I think, I don't know if you're ever ready. Let's just put it that way. At 27, standing on Pebble Beach and hosting my first US Open, I wasn't ready for that, and I'm 47 years old now, 20 years later. And I look back on it and I'd be like, man, you were dumb and arrogant, and, you kind of go back to the basics of what you learn from people. And, I knew how to water, so I wasn't worried about that. But, walking into that position, I didn't know anything about Pacific anguina nematodes and what a pain in the ass they were back then. And, I didn't know that I'd have to put out 1/10 of a pound of nitrogen every week just to combat that. And those are the kind of things that you learn on the fly. So, sometimes things, I generally kept my mouth shut and just worked. And, that kind of served me well through my whole career. But going to, having some strong mentors in the industry and working for people that, knew how to create a spray program and, just learning those fundamentals and knew how to hand water, knew how to motivate people. And when you have those opportunities to work for different people and see those different ways how they do things, you pick up on that. And it's kind of like, I probably taught more people in the industry of what not to do than what to do. And it's kind of funny because, you make a lot of mistakes all along the way, and that's okay. The biggest lesson I ever learned was walking in a boardroom with 13 Wall Street guys, from Lehman Brothers to Morgan Stanley, all these big guys. And I totally screwed something up. I can't remember what it was at Wingfoot. And they said, I'm like, yeah, it's my fault. And they're like, well, what did you learn from it? And I just remember saying, hey, this is what I learned from it. It will never happen again. And that's all they wanted to hear. So I think sometimes you can, I don't know if I'm ready, or I think I'm ready. I don't know if you're ever ready. You just got to go out and do it and have the confidence in your, your fundamentals and, keeping things simple. So I say get uncomfortable, put yourself in uncomfortable situations and learn from them. That's how you do it. I never thought I could grow bent grass in South Carolina and Hilton Head. And, what got me through those years was how my water management. Because when I got there, they watered 8 minutes every night. 8 minutes on bent greens every night. And it was just, I'm like, no wonder you've had problems. So we just shut the water off, and no one else knew how I wanted to hand water. And it was rough in the beginning until I could teach guys. And that's when moisture meters came out. So I kind of figured out real quick where my threshold was. Be like, okay, don't let anything get drier than a 12 until I could see how they were hand watering. And I don't want anything wetter than a 17. And you poke the green this way. And there was only 2 people that spoke English on the staff, myself and my assistant. And that was it. So it was very intimidating, but You just kind of roll your sleeves up and you get in the trenches and you do it. That's all there is to it. Don't overcomplicate it.
Did you say that the average water content of your greens was from 12 to 17?
Yeah.
At one of the golf courses that I worked at, I had an internship with this past summer. The superintendent wanted to keep it at between 35 and 40. I personally thought that it was a lot to keep between that high of a level, because sometimes they did water wilt, because we had like these severe storms. We even had the one of the tropical depressions, I believe, I don't know which one it was called, come up through the area, and we read it about a week later, and it read at about 60%. So when we get to those like areas like that, it was still extremely hard to recover from, because one, after the storm hit, it was like 60% water, and then the heat hit and it basically boiled everything. And the golfers were complaining because it happened on the greens as well as the fairways, and it was just a mess for the end of the summer. Like, how would you recover from like water wilt that's in the 60s? You just let it dry out, or do you apply anything to make it better?
You can apply some, anionic surfactants that are very strong that can help, facilitate, breaking surface tension, and they have drying down capabilities. But, you have to be careful, because if it's a compromised root system to begin with, because it's too wet, you kind of have to slowly, dry things down, and, it's going to be seen kind of weird, but you're probably going to have to syringe. I've come across that so many different times. So, my old adage was, if you heat a pot of water and you heat a pot of air, which one heats up faster? The pot of air, right? But when you have a pot of air and you have a pot of water, which one cools down faster? The air. So always keeping oxygen in your profile was key. But it's tricky, because in those instances you can't just shut the water off. That turf is compromised, and you're probably gonna have to syringe your way out of it. And it's not gonna be pleasant. But yeah, that's a tough road.
Might also be putting some drainage or something in there to not have 60% moisture. I mean, those are the kinds of things where like, oh, we're going to wilt at high moisture levels, but maybe we should try and get that moisture out of there quick.
Yeah, the thing was, there's new developments going up like around the area, and all the water that comes from those areas is just flowing right through like the creek that goes right through the golf course. So we're getting a lot more water than they ever have before. Like, my boss was talking about how, like, he's been there for 35 years and it's never been this bad, because the past 3 years they've had 3 insane floods that have destroyed the clubhouse, put mud on the greens. A couple of the signs for like the holes have been washed away. Tee markers have been washed away because of the floods. It's just an insane situation that I hope that never happens at the course again, but it's just something that is not a freak accident, but poor construction and drainage is another thing, because it's in a valley. So
I was shocked that, but the biggest thing, the guys, different parts of the country, you learn different things. When I worked out west, it was all about water quality. Disease management was very minimal. Maybe fusarium along the coast, and you learned about nematodes. And you go to the Pacific, or you go to the Southwest, it's all water quality, in Texas and parts of Florida. And I think the biggest thing, to take away is when you start going through peak or high irrigation periods, where everyone did in the Northeast, and you really need to focus on checking your water quality, because I saw a lot of black layer in the Northeast this year, and it was during dry periods. And usually, to me, that's a red flag. If you're not over irrigating and you're wet, I usually go to bicarbonate salt buildup. And I know we get a lot of rain in the Northeast, but that's something to always keep in the back of your mind that I saw a lot of this year was, poor water quality. Some of the golf courses now have to use reclaimed water or fluent water from subdivisions and things like that. So, really, really keep an eye on that one.
Eric, you've been all over the country. What was your favorite place to work? Wow.
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Probably congressional. That was the most challenging. You really you earned your money at congressional from an agronomic standpoint. That was probably the most challenging. From seeing a project go from walking in the door to U.S. Open was Wingfoot. I'll never forget that experience of doing all that hard work. But I don't think there's any superintendent that's played more rounds at Pebble Beach than me. I would play almost every day. I had a goal of trying to get a hole in one on the number 7 at Pebble Beach, and I'd take 10 balls out every day and hit it in, but never happened. But I think they're all special for their own reasons. But true test of agronomic knowledge and watering capability, the transition zone of Washington, D.C. by far was the most educational experience of my career. And people ask me, what did you learn? I learned the political structure at Wingfoot and how to get things done, with the politics involved at the club. Very political atmosphere. Learned how to hand water in Philadelphia, learned my chemicals in Washington, D.C., and I learned water quality out west. And, that's where just being able to get up and, not putting any kind of parameters on where I wanted to work or where I wanted to live really kind of benefited me in my career, moving around and learning from different people. So, I'm a huge advocate. As soon as you geographically confine yourself, it's tough to get jobs. Be mobile, move while you're young and you can.
I think the other thing about your point at congressional is look at all the people that came out of that place from 95 to 98, 99 around the opens, and all those people that went on to be super successful, whether it was Sam or I don't know, you can just name a zillion people that went through there at that point, and it was just a time period where like you learned so much and there was so much competition. All the students don't know, but like you're living in 2 houses of 16 people packed together like sardines during that period, and the people that came out of that whole kind of 4 or 5 year period all went on to do crazy big things. It was pretty unbelievable.
I bet you there's 30 or 40 superintendents that came out of there easily, and yeah, I mean, it was, if you wanted to get a better job, you just had to work harder. If you wanted to be walk mowing rough on a residential rough unit, you came in late or hung over. But if you wanted to, actually do some fun, cool things, it was work. It was work, but it was quite the humbling experience working there, but it was most rewarding.
Eric, I had 2 questions to ask you. First one is, you mentioned you were a assistant for 6 years before you were able to take a superintendent's position. I guess coming out of college and going to Marion, what was your biggest inspiration to keep moving up the ropes and setting your career up coming out of college?
I wanted to be part of a championship. I didn't care if I was a spray tech, irrigation tech, assistant. I wanted to be part of a U.S. Open. And that was my goal. I set a simple goal. I would set that was my long-term goal, but it was get out of college, be the spray tech at Marion, become an assistant, and see where that took me. I think it's important that everyone define some career goals and what you want to do and where you want to do it. And then just define some shorter goals. And, I've always been a goal driven person. I still write goals down to this day, of what I want to do and where I want to be and stuff like that. But I think sometimes, you you need to have a little direction coming out of school. I think, some friends just said, well, I'll get an assistant's job. And, that's great. They're still in Pennsylvania and they're superintendents now, but it took them a lot longer, to get places. So I think, where you are, define your goal, your ultimate goal that you want to accomplish within the turf industry, and then define some shorter term goals, and then work for the people that can help you obtain those goals is basically it. I don't think it's a big, secret to success. A lot of the turf industry and a lot of my career was luck and timing, putting myself in situations and, going from there, putting myself in uncomfortable situations, working for people, grinding it out, that blood, sweat, and tears, because I knew what I wanted to do. But, definitely, work for people that can open up doors for you, because it helps. It definitely helps. I met a lot of people at the USGA early on when I was an assistant, and, they, they knew me and they knew who I had worked for. So I was extremely lucky. I was lucky and I had good timing. And I like to think it's because I put myself in those situations. They say, what is it? Luck is just hard work. It's putting yourself out there and doing it, and develop those goals and, go after them. There's nothing holding you back. And I honestly think that, I keep saying this, in the next 5 to 10 years, if golf keeps going the way it is, I think, maybe golf will start building out again in the United States, more projects. I think, you're going to see more developmental projects around golf courses. I think right now you're going to see an intermediate, or this is just a little bit of a high, but I think still some of the facilities that are going to need to close are going to close, and, shut down. But I just don't see a lot of people getting in the industry. I don't. And I think, you guys are well poised to, be on that next big bubble, like the late 90s, and, where there was a shortage of people. And, in the early 2000s, all the way up through 2010, the industry was kind of flooded and a lot of people have left. I think COVID's going to turn a lot of people out of the industry this year, just because they got tired of dealing with the staffing issues and things like that. So I believe golf is strong and you guys have a great future ahead of you. Just identify what you want to do and how you want to get there.
My second question to you is, having the opportunity to move around a lot in the country, would you suggest that students who are, going on to their second or third internship, possibly, take a break from, maybe if they were working in the Northeast, to try something out West, or maybe go down South to see a different kind of environment?
Absolutely. I really believe that, because, you might go down to Florida and love, Bermuda management. Bermuda management, I'm telling you, I think Bermuda's harder to manage than cool season turf. Really do. Did it for 6 years and I hated it. Hated it because you had to continually manipulate it. The ultra dwarf Bermuda grasses require just as much fungicide, insecticide, growth regulators, verticutting, top dressing, to produce a quality ultra dwarf Bermuda grass is an art. It really is. And there, it's a knack. It just takes experience in what you're doing. But I would advocate, going around, you know is I go around, try a couple different experiences, see what you like, what you don't like, but then also identify where you want to graduate and go work. For who, whether it's spray tech, irrigation tech, crew member, um, to just get in a system and learn from that person. When you go interview, you should equally be interviewing the superintendent. You have to do it in a respectful way, but what you're going to learn. And a lot of superintendents now are putting flags up in their offices where all their assistants are, and what they're doing. And there's quite a few people in the industry that I really respect, and that are tough, but they're fair, and you can learn a lot. But I would definitely, go. I mean, if your desire is to be in the Colorado mountains, then I don't know why you would go to Florida, quite honestly. Getting a job in the Colorado mountains or Montana is harder than probably getting a U.S. Open. Those jobs do not come open, where you can grow or bent grass at 50 degrees at night in the summertime and it gets 90 during the day. I mean, that's like a home run. But yeah, I would really research what you kind of want to learn and go to those areas. I think there's huge value in that, because you just, while you work at a golf course and you get intimate about how that golf course reacts, but how many times do you know that number 2 green is your indicator green for wilt? Okay, great. Number 2 wilts, it's the first one to wilt, the rest are going to wilt. What else are you going to take away from that? But, going to, other areas around the country and learning is what's going to diversify you, and being able to walk into any kind of, board interview. And I was asked this question, was, when I went to go interview in the Carolinas. So I did that developmental project in Oregon, and the financing fell through, the bridge loan. So, I had to be like, okay, punt, what's available out there? And, Bermuda grass, paspalum, and bent grass in South Carolina. And, I went down and I said, you either know how to grow grass or you don't, Bermuda or bent. And it was a pretty arrogant comment, but it got me the job. And boy, I did not know how to grow Bermuda grass, and it was freaking painful. But you learn by year 2 or 3, and be like, poof, But I would definitely move around a little bit. But when you get closer to the end of where you want to end up, then get in that system. When I say get in that system, you have to. There's probably going to be a pecking order at some of these bigger places that you have to, get in and work your way up, and just be patient, because, when you become impatient is generally when you make mistakes, and that's in management of turf and management of careers. I've seen it.
Thank
you. Yeah. What are you guys seeing out there? Is there a backlog of people at these clubs, or are you guys in high demand for, coming out? What are you guys seeing in the industry?
I see some clubs. So I'm looking at jobs right now, and I'm looking between okay, you go to a club as a low AIT, be an AIT for 4 or 5 years, and then potentially move on to a spray tech, then an assistant position after 4 or 5 years, or go to a club that is an AI, only one AIT, third assistant, second assistant type position, and they have probably 4 assistants in their rankings, and I'm kind of between where I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Billy, we should talk. The industry is definitely moving away from that. AIT positions are going to go away. There's so much demand for educated people and people that want to do this passionately and work hard. They can't find enough of those people. I mean, I'm getting requests for 200 and 300 assistant positions saying I'll take somebody straight out of school for an
Yeah.
assistant position, which is like ridiculous. Like you're not going to normally get that.
Yeah.
I think that you're going to see the opposite. I think that you're going to see AIT positions go away. I think you're going to see more real assistant and maybe second assistant positions. And then you're going to see those that don't have a formal degree, they're going to have foremen, spray techs, irrigation techs, which really is the way it used to be. There weren't all these like AITs. They created these positions in the 90s because there were so many people coming out, or like probably the early 2000s, there were so many people coming out that they just had to like give them a title so that the student felt
Yeah.
good about it. I don't know why all you students think that a title means anything, because it's really worthless early on in your career. But there's not enough of you coming out. You know, Eric, when you graduated in 96 and I graduated in 98, there were like 200 to 250 undergrads in the program. And the 2-year program was kicking out 35 students a year. We're kicking out like 10 now, you know, maybe 15. That's the advantage to you all as students, is that you're like one of a much smaller group of people that you kind of have the ability to expect more, but also don't think that a title means anything at this point. So I see that the average time to become a superintendent, I think, is probably around 6 to 8 years right now, and it used to be a little higher. But if you're smart, if you plan things out, like Eric said, like you have a plan and a definitive idea of what you want to do, you can make that either significantly shorter or reach a higher level in that same amount of time or shortly thereafter. It's just all about planning.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, John. I think you guys will get out of this what you put into it. You know, you really will. And I think, you know, I always went over experience versus title. That was like my thing. I didn't care. I didn't care if I was, you know, weed whacking stream banks, but you know, obviously that's not a job I wanted to do all the time, but like you just did whatever you had to do. Because it was extremely competitive when I came out. John was right. They didn't have the AIT position. You were just on the staff and that was it. And, you know, you had to work 12 to 17 hours a day to get recognized, to have the opportunity to become spray tech, irrigation tech, and then assistant. And, you know, I think, guys, that's reality. You know, whether you want to hear it or not, you're going to have to put the time in and you're going to have to work hard, because the sacrifices you make in the first 6 years will financially impact you for the future. So if you bust your butt now, and then all of a sudden you've worked for the right people, you have your plan, you're looking at probably easily 6-figure salary. But
this is a conversation I just had with somebody, Eric. It's ridiculous. I was like, you could like make $15 an hour, and like, you know, because you're working so many overtime hours and stuff, you're, you know, maybe you're making $50,000 a year. But it's such a weird system, and in the sense that like you could work 6 to 7 years at that. I'm making 60 grand, right? And then I'm like excited. I'm making 60 grand, and then you get hired making 180 grand as a superintendent, right? And it's like, holy shit, that this is like a totally different thing in terms of the level that you're going to get to based on what you're kind of putting yourself in, you know, that kind of paying your dues, I guess. But you don't get that $200,000 a year job without putting in your dues early on and being smart and strategic about things.
And here's the reality check, guys. You could Google how many jobs pay $200,000. Like, I mean, really do some work on it. Unless you're an entrepreneur, you own your own business, or like, I don't know, maybe like a chemical engineer. My roommate was a chemical engineer, and he consults, and he makes 60 grand a month consulting. You know, like, come on, you know, I think you have to be realistic of what you're gonna make. But I've been around it long enough. You know, members piss you off, head pros piss you off, the general manager pisses you off. But in the course of a day of oversight and what you're doing, there's like none. And you're being paid to be outside. It's a tough job, but like, put it in perspective. A friend of mine said, you know what, babies aren't dying on your golf course like in the hospital. And it is so true, and, have fun with it, work hard, but, also put some things in perspective, really, how much you're being paid, what you're doing, your oversight. And I think, as you get older, you kind of learn, let's focus on the 80% of the job that's great. And that 20% that used to chap your ass coming up through the ranks doesn't matter. And you bust your butt now. If my son's actually thinking about getting in the turf career, God help him. And I was just like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, then, shut up, elbows and asses. That's all you got to do when you get on a golf course, work hard, pay attention. And, we'll get your education and we'll go from there. But it's just, I think there's a wonderful opportunity, and just pay your dues, suck it up, get it done, get the names on the resume, the clubs, and that will get you, if, you're not asleep at the wheel, you should be able to get a pretty good paying job. It's not that hard of a plan, is what I'm trying to say. But I agree with you, John. It's pay your dues now, man. And, I wanted to be an hourly employee. I didn't want to be salary, but, because you make more money that way.
You think
But that second AIT title is so important. It's like, it's going to make or break you.
It's not. I laugh with you too. I think it's the reason we had AITs at Wingfoot was for me to get around the union. I didn't want to have any more union employees. So we developed an assistant and training program there, and we had 12 AITs. And it was, if you interviewed every one of them, it was a bogus title for me to get around the union. And, that's what you had to do.
You think that's a negotiation point right now with being salaried or hourly instead of salaried?
I think they've leveled that playing field pretty good. I think back in the day when we were salaried employees, we were working 80, 90, 100-hour work weeks. But now, with the state legislations coming out and how much people are working, you do have to pay them that overtime. So, I'm about the experience and who you're going to go work for. And you know what? If you got to eat top ramen for another 2 years, or, you just suck it up and do it. That's the biggest advice I can say. That's what I would tell my son. Be like, you know what? Just suck it up and do it. It sucks, but, no crying over it.
Kyle, we should probably wrap this up because I know we're over like an hour and 20 minutes, and I see people dropping out, but I don't want to end it if people have questions, but maybe you can kind of wrap it up.
Yes. I think there's a lot of good questions asked and answered. If anybody's got anything real quick, I'll stay quiet for a minute. All right. Well, Eric, thank you very much again for joining us tonight. It really means a lot. And to have a Penn State alumni come join us and talk to us about their
it was my pleasure. And Kyle, you have my contact information. You have my cell phone number. You've got my email. If you guys have any questions at all about different geographic areas around the United States, obviously Dr. Kaminsky's, your first point of contact, but, I'm traveling around a lot and I get to see a lot. I travel 4 weeks a month. I see 30 to 40 golf courses a week. You learn a lot. And if I have one parting piece of advice for you guys, once you become a superintendent, take a week, convince your club, and go travel and see golf courses around the United States. You will learn a lot in that week. You really will. And, go learn from them, and you develop another contact in the industry. So it's all about networking. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Eric, it was awesome. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yep, anytime.
For everybody else, thank you guys for joining this week and the second meeting. And we had more participants than last week, and I look forward to hopefully keeping those numbers up. Dr. Kaminsky, Dr. McGraw, thank you guys very much for hosting and helping be a part of all this, making this happen. And we will see you guys next Tuesday at 6 o'clock.
All right. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.